Good evening, everyone. I am Bertha Johnson, one of the deputy city managers for the city of Durham. And I am so glad that these guys went before us because, as you can see, there are lots of funding streams and lots of acronyms. And I know I saw some comments in the chat about all of those acronyms. So maybe Adam can catch up with those because I certainly don't know all of them. But today I'm going to talk about the city of Durham's ARPA funding and our process and strategy. Before I get started, I want to mention one source of funding that Adam mentioned, which is the CRF funding that the city and county received. And I want to point out, as we talk about youth, the city of Durham received 2.9 million from that source, and we used the majority of those funds, about 2.6 million, to support DHA properties, Durham Housing Authority properties, and quickly getting broadband connectivity to those properties that had students who were all of a sudden required to learn remotely. And so we were very proud to be able to have that opportunity to support Durham Housing Authority and youth and making sure that they connect to the internet so that they can continue their learning remotely. Next slide. So how did Durham determine its priorities? Well, we started with input from residents. We created opportunities for community-based organizations to submit proposals for funding and assembled review committees to rate and rank proposals according to our equity impact criteria. So how are diverse community voices integrated and determine priorities? The city of Durham and Durham County, we hosted multiple community events in partnership with North Carolina Central University. We distributed surveys. We received over 300 responses. We engaged hundreds of residents from all corners of Durham. The opportunity to submit proposals for funding was distributed to thousands of people and was open to all communities in Durham. So anyone could apply for funding through our website. The demographic profiles of applicants and reviewers showed that a diverse set of voices were included in this process. I will say we did not have as many youth engaged in the review process or participating in the community engagement events. But I'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about how the youth voices were heard through the proposals. So what spending priorities were determined that specifically relate to youth and education? There were many proposals related to youth. To see the full list, you can go to our website, which I will drop in the chat. You can look at all of the proposals there. We wanted to be transparent and let everyone see what proposals we received, as well as the process by which we made decisions around those proposals. Next slide. So here's the scorecard we used. One of the things we wanted to do is make sure we were transparent with the proposals. And so if you go on our website and look at the guidance that was given to proposers as well as the reviewers, they received the scorecard in advance of submitting their proposals. So they were able to look at the categories here and see how their proposal or demonstrate or articulate how their proposal aligns with these categories. When you look at the equity impact, you can't see all of the questions behind that criterion, but there were questions around who was impacted, how do you determine if that particular area needs that particular proposal or that particular strategy or solution? How does it align with the city's goals? Was the proposal community driven? It was important to us to know that proposals actually went out in the community, not necessarily during the pandemic, whether it be surveys or previous engagement, that these were community driven needs that will address the community in which they're proposing the solution for. Collaboration, it was very important to us that our proposals collaborated with other organizations who may be providing the same service or could partner with them to provide additional services. And again, administration. And the last one is important, qualified census tract. We use the census tract provided to us by HUD to make sure that we knew where the services would be provided. And we have an opportunity to go back to our proposals and say, this is the target area, based on HUD guidance, because some proposals propose serving the entire city, and that is not really equity. And so we wanted to make sure that we knew that what the targeted area was for the proposals. Next slide. So the question here was around, what proposals or what funding are we that we have approved for the areas that are included in the white paper. The city of Durham has only allocated 7.5 million of its funding, its ARPA funding, and that was premium pay for public employees. Although the city council has not approved any of the 71 proposals that were submitted at this point, many of them are related to youth. Many of the proposals were around, how do we help youth who may have lost learning during the pandemic with after school programs, summer camps, academic support and enrichment. Others were around youth asset building. How do we help youth overcome barriers to post-secondary education and living wage employment, mental health support for youth and children. And one of the other big areas was around housing. And so one proposal was transitional housing for youth between at ages of 18 and 24 who were homeless, housing insecure, and what's the long-term strategy for serving those youth. And so there were many proposals. Again, there are 71 proposals that the city received. All of those are on the website. I dropped the link in the chat where you can look at all of those. We have an ARP at durhamnc.gov website set up, an email account set up, and we are on the website, which you can email us any ideas, questions, or thoughts you have for the city of Durham. We also, again, are in partnership with Durham County, and we're all looking at the same proposals and looking for opportunities to leverage our resources to get better outcomes for our residents. Next slide. So again, how much remaining funding is there? 44 million. Again, the city council has not approved any proposals at this point. They received all of the proposals. They are currently reviewing those proposals and will be coming back at a work session, a city council work session, to discuss prioritizing the proposals. What is the timeline for determining allocation of funds? At present, we don't have a timeline. We are waiting for city council to make the final decision. As we said at the very beginning of this process, that city council would make the final decision based on the information that they hear from residents, as well as what they heard from staff and for other stakeholders in the community. And so that leads to the final question: how can community members be involved in the next round of funding? We haven't decided on the next round of funding and what that looks like, what process we will use, but what we are committed to is hearing from our residents and helping us design the next process. As we think about the lack of participation by youth in this process, and I say that to say that we have some lessons learned about maybe better ways to engage youth, and being part of the review panel or being part of the teams that help us develop the scorecard, we may be able to have, youth sessions where we focus, on youth or other topics of interest to youth, and kind of funnel the funding to those priorities in the next round. So there's lots of opportunity to design the next round, and we're happy to hear from you in terms of your ideas about how we design the round, and also how we create a scorecard or a matrix to prioritize those funding proposals.